I was going to ask, who's in charge of purchasing chairs here at Amy? No? Who's going to take...
That is not correct.
Who's going to take responsibility for these chairs? Who is it?
Beth Brunk gets all the credit for the chairs. Thank you, Chair.
Nice job. Love them. All right, I've got 3 o'clock. It is Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. It's 3 p.m. This is the August meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board. This time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Barnes. Chaplin. Here. Delgado. Fasella.
Present.
Hannon.
Here.
Nudo.
Yes.
Dial.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. And we have another member entering the room.
And Dick Barnes.
We'll show that Dick Barnes has entered the room. At this time, I'll ask for a motion and second to approve our agenda for today's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve our agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Audience participation? I see none. We'll move into the approval of our board meeting minutes from our open session of July 26, 2023. A motion and a second, please.
So moved. Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the board meeting minutes from our open session of July 26, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Communications. Any board members have any communications with the public they'd like to share? Carl. All right. This time, we'll ask the managing director for his report, please.
All right, thank you. This is for the first month of the year, the fiscal year, that is. So July, there were 311,827 rides in July. July is oftentimes, in fact always, the low ridership month because there is no school of any kind, middle school, high school, or college. So that is pretty much all community rides, maybe some faculty and staff for the university. And of course, the year-to-date ridership and the year-to-date information is all the same as the month, since it's month number 1. So nothing to point out there. If you just look at the July ridership by year, you can see that our stair-step continues to grow, but we still are shy of our 2019 level, but we're getting there. Yes, sir.
I laid a straight line across that figure. That's linear growth.
Can you turn your microphone on?
I laid a straight line across these bars, and it's a linear growth rate.
You spoken just like a university professor.
Well, it's not exponential, which is what you'd like to have.
We actually would not like to see an exponential growth because we don't have the capacity right now. Now would be a good time, as a reminder, I suppose, that we still don't have full service, so we don't have full capacity on the street. So the linear growth line is more palatable for our capacity to contain.
Well, growth anyway.
Yes.
There's degrees of linearity too.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Moving on from stats class, we'll move into operating revenue. July 2023 operating revenue was 34.6% above July of 2022, and as I said, all of the year-to-date stats will be the same as the monthly. So the July operating expenses were 11.8% above July of 2022, and same for the year-to-date.
I don't understand why the 34.6, that huge percentage.
Well, I don't know that I have a ready answer for you. I think a big chunk of that is July is the first month of a new year in our current term with the university, and so their rate went up. Not 34%, but that certainly is a chunk of it. Our fare box revenue continues to grow, so we're seeing growth on that from month to month. And then I'm going to phone a friend to Michelle, our finance director, to see if she has anything that she wants to add to that.
Okay.
As I'm just running through the items, what Carl mentioned is right on track here. The U of I was about, I don't know, 15,000 more this time. And then the property tax isn't part of the operating revenue, but that we have a higher amount that we're accruing for that also. And then we're getting a lot of good interest income on our money right now because the rate is close to 4.5%. And I think we made $155,000 in interest income. Actually,
Yeah.
investment income was $164,980.
Yeah,
here in July.
That's a good reminder, because that was a big chunk of it. If you remember, last year interest rates were like less than a percent, and now they're around 4%. So it's more than 4 times what it was the year before.
Busey's got a pony up. They're at 4.3, and I think everybody else is at 4.5. So we may need to knock on their door.
We do.
And it's a special contract work. Do we ever blow our horn on how many high school students ride our buses?
Blow our horn on how many high school students ride our buses. We are in pretty regular conversation with both school districts about capacity issues and behavior issues, all issues regarding both middle school and high school transportation. And so if we identify a problem, we would bring that to the school district, and we would negotiate putting an additional bus into service, for instance, if we needed to.
I wasn't worried about the operating condition. It's just the quantity.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the capacity. So if we were over capacity, then we would be in communication with the school district about that to put additional service out.
Yeah. But
They would pay for it.
blow our horn that we're taking a lot of high school students to and from school and the university students.
So I may have misunderstood what you meant by blow our horn. I thought you meant like throw up a red flag or issue a warning,
no.
but you're saying like from a marketing perspective?
From the press point of view.
Yeah. We talk about it frequently. I don't know that we have we don't have a marketing campaign around it, but we do talk about it. I mean, it's significant that we carry middle school and high school students, and that saves the school districts a lot of money. About $1.5 million plus a year, so that's significant.
Good. That's the kind of talk I think needs to be in a press release. It goes to the newspaper every now and then, or the television.
Okay.
Yeah. You see people say, look, there goes another empty bus. That's the Dan Metzes of the world. And he happens to be somebody I know.
Yep. When people say that, we can direct them to the school service.
Right.
All
Of
right.
course, they could be full as far as Dan's concerned, but they aren't.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think he sees that well, so he assumes they're not. But anyway, they aren't. And so I thought combating that attitude, which I hear often, we could do a press release type combating that idea. Thanks.
Okay, I think I was at, yes, the operating revenue, the actual compared to the budget. So the year-to-date operating revenue so far is $80,000 below budget, and the operating expenses were $534,000 below budget. Just as a reminder, I know you all know this, but when we talk about the budget, that's we do a single amount, but then we accrue that over the year, and so finance does a calculation of how many hours of service we have out on the street, in this case for July, and then they kind of prorate that as a per hour revenue, and so it's you accrue an estimate, and as the year progresses, I believe you'll see that our actual operating will exceed what we have budgeted, but in this first month it was a little below what is budgeted, but the estimated budget. Okay. Moving on to a couple of the notes that I want to highlight. The Willard Airport Advisory Committee, Advisory Board met for the first time. The new board met for the first time this morning. It was mostly, I don't want to say perfunctory, but it was more like a administrative meeting where we introduced who the board members were and talked through the bylaws and approved the bylaws that we would use moving forward, and we elected a chair and a vice chair. The chair that was elected was Carly McCrory, who is the executive director of our Economic Development Corporation. And she's been involved with the previous iteration of the advisory group. And then the vice chair is Jane DeLuce, who is the CEO of Visit Champaign, the Visitor and Convention Bureau. They don't call it that, but that's what it is. So that's the chair and the vice chair. So we'll start meeting regularly and determining what our goals are and what the mission is. And so I'm very excited and looking forward to participating in that, and hope that we can improve the airport. It's a great airport already, but we want to improve it for the community and the entire county. And then, yes.
I want to make it clear that I am very much in favor of the airport coming under the domain of the Mass Transit District. Get it away from the university. They manage it, the airport, like they used to manage Allerton. It's a far-flung enterprise, got nothing to do with academics, and it's gradually going like this. And I don't know who these two people are, but if they're bureaucratic at all, it's just more of the same stuff. Somehow we got to get MTD handling and running this operation out there. I'm in favor of it. I'll do whatever is necessary to get that done.
You mean the whole airport?
Yeah. What is there?
You mean managing the airport, not just running a bus out there?
Not just running buses out there. We already do that, don't we?
I could mow the golf course, once a week.
Okay, so we don't, but I didn't know that. And that's irrelevant to what I'm trying to say. Years of neglect and years of bureaucratic fooling around.
I was on that board for 11 years, and the previous board had no teeth to it. Advisory was a loose term. This board, as it's been reconstituted, has got real teeth. And just out of curiosity, how many of you use the airport regularly to fly in and fly out? I mean regularly, not for an occasional. The statistics are 8 out of 10 people who fly somewhere out of Champaign don't fly out of Champaign. They fly out of O'Hare, Indy, some degree Bloomington. It's overrated as far as what people think, and of course Midway. And so when the airport was constituted back in the 40s, Willard Airport, named after I think the past president of the university, was designated that the community could use it. And so I believe that the university is obligated. This isn't just a maybe or something that should be done. The university is obligated to provide good service, and we are not going to attract the best and the brightest in the university professors and administrative people, and we're not going to attract regional and national companies that want to be able to fly their clients in and out and their employees in and out of town with this kind of an air class service. We have American, which is priced too high because they own the business travel, and that's where the 2 out of 10 comes from. The 8 out of the 10 come from recreational family flyers, and they want to go with low-cost air carriers that are available in other airlines, and we can get them if it's funded properly. And so to Bruce's point, we have the ability, yes, MTD has the ability legislatively and legally to run an airport, and it's done. So I'm all for what he said. I think you guys could do it, and you'd do it a hell of a lot better. We're in the transportation business.
Alan, do you know whether the university has ever expressed any interest in divesting itself of the airport?
That's why this committee's in existence. We started 11 years ago to tell them how unhappy we were. And we met with Chancellor Wise at the time. She was all for it. Of course, when she left, it lost its impetus.
By their action, the university's expressed a disinterest in it.
Well, it's not a part of their, they say it's not a part of their core competency, but they need it worse than anybody else to attract best and brightest people and admin people. It's just beyond me. And so I think we've got a fire lit with Carl on staff for this, on this advisory committee. And I'm very happy he's there.
How long would it take your committee to get it done?
Wow, I don't think I'm prepared to give a timeline. You know, certainly I'm not yet authorized, and I don't know that I ever will be authorized to speak for this particular committee, so I'm only speaking for myself and the Mass Transit District right now. But I believe that it will be a part of the discussion in terms of an ongoing sustainable funding model for the university. For the airport. And so I think there are some, as Ellen noted, there is some legislative and legal precedent in place that allows an Illinois mass transit district to own and operate an airport. I will say that there are a lot of complications to what one of you, I'm not sure which one, used the word divestment, but for the university to do that to the airport, I don't know if that's possible. So that's the other side of the formula that would have to happen. That is very complicated. There are a lot of historical federal funding grants and processes that have been in place that obligate the university to have a continuance of operation of the airport. Just like when we receive federal funding to build a facility, we are obligated to continue to operate the facility. And so it's complicated, and so we'll have lots of conversations about it, but because it's complicated, there is no way on God's green earth that I could give you a timeline, Bruce. I mean, I just have no idea, but I feel confident in saying that will be a part of the conversation.
In World War II, General Patton, he'd have an idea of what to do in a situation, and he'd set all his guys getting ready for that plan. He had them all ready. And then when it showed up before the people above him that there was a need for this, he'd step in and say, I can do that. I got it all ready. And so what I'm suggesting is that you get ready by saying to your staff, what would it take? What do we need to do? What would we have to have in place to take this on? That's something you could do and be ready for the time the committee turns to you and says, Carl, Could the MTD handle the airport? And you just unload a barrage of course.
I am prepared to answer that question if and when they ask me that.
Well, I'm thinking of the details.
I'm prepared to give a
Okay.
fair amount of detail.
I didn't mean to belittle what you already know about it. Sometimes getting a whole agenda plan in case, in this case, very likely.
I have another question for Alan, if he doesn't mind. Where does the airport's funding come from now?
There's a subsidy, they consider it a subsidy of about $800,000 from the general revenue of what the university receives from the state. And then they've got parking revenue, concessions revenue, airline fees for landing and takeoffs and those kinds of things. But for example, our budget's probably in the vicinity of under $1 million, ballparkish. Bloomington has just gone from 2.8 million to now they're taxing the whole county property tax-wise. So that's why they attract low-cost air carriers, because their fees are much less. They can set up arrangements to get low-cost air carriers in here, and it's a shame that we can't even take care of our own people, and we'd be able to fill several low-cost air carriers right now with the people we're losing. You don't have to divest, by the way. They don't have to divest their ownership of it. We manage it. They can keep it. They can keep everything. You don't have to divest.
Yeah, I was just responding to the word that one of you used. But you're right. That is an alternative. Is that they maintain ownership and we would just be an operator. That is within the constellation of things that could happen.
You have precedent already.
You'll always have the bureaucracy hanging over you, stymieing you from the university. And if that were the case, why would they want to own it and not run it? They're right now running it in the ground, and they apparently like running the airport into the ground. And there's no way it seems you can shake the bureaucracy over there. But if we're going to take it on, I'd say not partial with somebody else owning it.
Just a point of order, I think we've strayed pretty far from our published agenda, so as far as OMA, maybe if we want to talk about this more, we could set it for a future meeting, but we probably shouldn't.
You were anticipating a short meeting, that's all you can.
It's a great opportunity for the MTD. Fantastic.
I agree, I just don't know that we should be discussing this in an open meeting unless we've got it on our agenda.
I think that's a fair point. I'm getting the move ahead motion from the chair. So I in the a shared topic of partnership and good community partnerships like we have with the university and the airport. We also have a good partnership with Parkland College, and you hopefully saw my note that we have established a scholarship with the college in order to fund a maintenance technician, and we have our first student, Robert Zufall, who is will go down in history as the first MTD scholarship recipient. He is currently employed in our maintenance department and attending classes in their automotive maintenance program. And so we're looking forward to that. We think that that'll be a really successful and interesting program and is a great partnership between the two organizations, Parkland and MTD. And then with that, I will take any questions, any additional questions that you have through page 35 of your board packet.
I got a question, of course. How much does a hydrogen bus weigh in its ready-to-go operational form?
Bruce?
Especially compared to a diesel hybrid.
I couldn't even begin to answer that question.
Here we go.
But Josh might know.
Josh is coming up to pull my fat out of the fire.
I can't speak for the 40-footers, but on the 60s that we have on property, they're at 49,000 pounds for the hydrogen. The hybrid equivalent is around 43, 44,000.
I think that.
Correct.
60
and
foot.
the
You're talking
60-foot, yeah.
60-foot bus.
Correct. And the 60-foot hydrogen we have on property now, they're 49,000 pounds, just under 50. But I don't know about the 40s we're getting. I haven't, I don't believe I have any stats on that.
Have you ever compared to a battery-driven bus, all battery bus? I know it's
in terms of
off
weight?
the subject, but
In terms of weight or in terms, yeah, I know the battery electric buses are heavier. I don't know by how much, but I know they are heavier than the hydrogen equivalent.
The majority of the weight in the hydrogen is in the batteries that are on that bus. Batteries are very heavy.
but you got less motor. You don't have a diesel motor sitting there. So it's interesting that the hydrogen bus is heavier than the diesel hybrid.
That's because of the batteries. Yeah, there are lots of batteries on there, and even more in the battery electric.
Sure. The note we got from the shopping center,
We're going to get there.
is that coming?
It's
on
an
the
agenda item, yep,
Okay.
we'll get there.
All right. Any other questions for Carl up to page 35? Go ahead, Al.
Page 16, annual ridership licensing revenue, annual pass revenue. It's down from last year by $2,000, 20%. And again, I go back to page 4, and maybe Jay can answer this question. You had mentioned that we're going to be probably at capacity for drivers by the end of the year, you hope. So that puts us on a level playing field to try and get our ridership up by having more routes more often. Is that a fair statement?
I did say that I think we'll be at the budgeted employment level. I think relatively soon. We've got lots of folks coming out of training, and they'll be available to drive soon. I will say the continued issue that we have is we'll be at our employment level, but the problem is that doesn't provide us with the number of people that we need on a daily basis. And the reason for that is that we are experiencing more call-offs per day from our existing group of employees than we ever had before. So I'm a little bit making up the numbers, but I'm not far off. But if we saw an average of 10 call-offs per day pre-COVID, post-COVID, we are experiencing 25, 30 call-offs per day. And
How
so,
does that affect the routes? I mean, is it?
how does that affect the routes? That's why we're not at full service. I mean, that's a big part of why we're not at full service, because we don't have, even at full employment, we're scrambling each day to pull people who aren't currently scheduled to get them in to make pullout because we have call-offs. And so that is, that's something that transit all the world over is experiencing right now, and I think probably every other industry. But it's just, we are in a different era, like it or not, agree with it or not, but we are in a different era today than we were even 3.5 years ago. And that is something that we're grappling with, and we're probably going to have to overhire from what we have budgeted in order to accommodate these number of call-offs. This is an oversimplified, an oversimplified response. It's more of a complicated issue than that, but that's the crux of it. And so, yes, we're going to be pretty close to being fully employed. No, that doesn't automatically translate into us being able to get 100% of our service back out on the street.
Well, I just wondered if, just one last question, if there's a correlation between, we're running at about 74% right now of the 2019 numbers in ridership, and then our annual passes are down 20%. I'm wondering if it has a correlation of, being unable to take care of their regular needs. If they're an annual pass rider, they want to have regularity of where they're going to. And I just think maybe that we ought to try and get them back with a lower
Absolutely.
cost annual pass. I don't think the revenue is worth a hill of beans, but I think we ought to, try to generate more interest in annual pass ridership and satisfy some needs there for regular users.
I agree that there probably is a correlation. I don't know how tight the correlation is, but there most certainly is one, and we very much would like to recapture those riders as well.
Now you're speaking like a statistician professor. Is there any penalty for too many call-outs by one person?
We have attendance policies in place, and we have, there is discipline associated with different quantities of different types of call-offs. The short answer is yes.
Is it effective?
But again, it's complicated.
Is it effective?
It is somewhat effective. It's about to become quite a bit more complicated because there's a new Illinois law called the Illinois Paid Leave Act that changes what we can do. Alan used on a different topic the term takes the teeth or something. He said something doesn't have teeth in it, and this law somewhat takes the teeth away from us in some respect in attendance. So it's going to be more complicated and difficult, not less. But we are trying to navigate that, and we work on that regularly to make adjustments to our attendance policy to accommodate the new state law.
Go ahead, Phil.
This is an interesting thing to think about because I think it's changed a lot from when I was a kid. When I first started working, the thing was always, well, if you're feeling sick, you go to work, and if you're throwing up and you're in bad enough shape, they'll send you home, but you never call off, right? You're not supposed to call off, go into work sick, they'll send you home if they think you can't work. And now I think with COVID, on some level, the calculus has changed where it's not just, hey, you go into assist work with some sniffles, whatever. Now we're all kind of worried about, hey, if there's an older person at work, you might kill them. So, there's still, brown bag flu, or brown bottle flu on Monday where people are showing up hungover and they decide, hey, I'm just going to call off because I was out late last night. But I do think some of this, at least, is people are thinking a little bit more about, hey, what if I go to work as a bus driver and God forbid this is COVID, So it doesn't totally excuse it, but I think that's a big part of the difference we're seeing post-COVID is people are now realizing, well, normally I'd go to work with maybe it's just a cold, but maybe it'll kill the old lady on my route. I don't know, So, yeah, this is something we're going to have to figure out how we work through, and it's not quite as simple as employees are lazier than they used to be. I think a lot of it is people are just thinking about being sick on the job differently than they used to.
Yeah, that is another way of saying what I intended to say, that we're in a new era because people have a different view and there can be other people looking in on it can have a different perception of it, but that's why I said right or wrong, this is the era that we're in, and people really view that differently, and I think that it's even above and beyond just pure COVID, but not to point you out, but you cough, and people kind of have a reaction to that now that they never had a reaction to just some guy in a room coughing pre-COVID, but now it's like, I've seen the video of the droplets flying, and Ellen's backing up away from you now.
To be fair, that's years of remodeling and asbestos and brake jobs. It has nothing to do with being sick. I just cough like this now.
So we're in a different era, and that's part of what we're trying to wrap our brains around. Thank goodness we've got a great HR department who is really diving into this and the new law and doing great work on helping us figure out how to move forward with it.
Anything else for Carl up to page 35?
Right here.
Go ahead, Dick.
Little different topic. In terms of the routes, is there a threshold in terms of passengers per revenue mile that if there's an extended time that we're below a certain number, we consider dropping or altering the route?
I can't quote a specific threshold to you, but it is something that we monitor. We do look at demand, and if demand drops below a threshold, then, for instance, in your neighborhood, we have the West Connect service, which is a van service over in a defined boundary area instead of a fixed route bus serving that area, and that's because demand is relatively low. But you can have low demand, but you still have people who live in that area of the community who rely on the service. And so we still want to have service out there, but we try to go with a less expensive, less intrusive service level to match that demand level. And then if demand grows in that area, then we can revert back to a fixed route, the bigger bus, and a fixed schedule and that kind of thing. So we do have different types of service that we use to respond to different levels of demand. We're probably going to be looking at a route that we have now, a fixed route, the Ruby in Northeast Urbana. Demand is pretty low on that and getting lower, and so we very likely will be looking at the next service year, possibly converting that to a Connect service similar to the West Connect. This would be the Northeast Connect service. So that's exactly the response to that type of question.
Yeah, I happen to notice that the Lime on one of your pages was 0.22, which seemed pretty low.
It is low. Since you mentioned the Lime is one that's a little complicated because we don't have full service out on the Lime, and so that kind of we're pulling all the threads together, and we end up talking about the same thing. Alan mentioned about the lower service. We're losing some riders. We're not getting as many annual passes sold and that kind of thing. So there's this chicken and egg battle that we constantly have. In the Lime, we don't have full service out there, and so we've lost riders on the Lime. Now, will they come back when we get back to full service? We'll have to see. We certainly hope so, and we'll try to gain those people back. But if we don't, then yeah, we'll have to take a look at what the Lime is going to look like long term. But it's hard to make that decision now when we have a fluid situation due to reduced service level, and then that engenders a reduced demand level.
Sure, thanks.
All right, last call for Carl up to page 35. Anything else? Moving on to our first action item, our Bus Procurement Purchase Order. Ashley.
Hello. So we are looking for authorization to purchase 26 buses. These will be 40-foot replacement hybrid buses. And as you might know, in 2011, there was a purchase of 36 40-foot hybrid buses, so we have a huge amount of buses to replace right around now as they're reaching the end of their useful life, which is about 12 to 15 years. So for this procurement, it'll be 26 buses, like I mentioned. The other 10 buses that needed to be replaced from the 2011 fleet are the 10 hydrogen buses that are currently online, which we spoke about earlier. So in order to make this enormous purchase, we are compiling 3 different sources of funding. So each of these 3 sources of funding, or these 3 separate purchases, are reflected in the FY24 budget, but we're combining them into one procurement here. But it's still made up of 3 different funding sources. So the first funding source, this is on the second page here, is federal. This is our Low-No grant that we received in June. And this will account for 10 of our buses, and that is an 85-15 match, so that's 85% federal, 15% local, although the price of the bus changed slightly, so the minimum match is 15%, but it's a little bit higher in this case in order to make up for the difference in bus price between when we wrote the grant and now when they're actually giving us our final price. The second funding source will be state Rebuild Illinois funds. That's round 3. So we were awarded $7.15 million in state rebuild funds in January. Again, the bus price changed from the time we wrote the grant to now when we're actually getting our final price. So we are matching that with some capital reserve funding. And then the last 6 buses will be paid for with federal ARPA funds, and there's no local match required there, and we have enough to pay for 100% of 6 of the buses. So the overall summary of all of the funding sources for all 26 buses is included in that final table at the bottom of the page.
Question. ARPA is Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Oh, it's also American Rescue Plan.
I was wondering what the Department of Defense had to do with buses.
Nothing in this case. So that is mostly all I have to summarize our project here. You will notice there are 2 action items. One is for the purchase of the 26 buses, which is $20,452,172. And then there's a second purchase for $60,455, and that will be for maintenance personnel training. That was also reflected in the federal Low-No grant that we received.
Questions for Ashley? Phil?
Well, since you called on me, Josh, obviously we're running a lot of hybrid buses already at this point, so what are the new features or components that need training, or is this kind of a way to get some of our newer guys down to the factory to learn about these buses? What are we going to be dealing with that's different on these?
Actually, not a lot. These are BAE hybrid buses, so it'll have a Cummins diesel engine, but then the BAE propulsion on the hybrid side. It's going to be pretty much the exact same setup that we've had since 2016, since we started buying BAE hybrids, so not a lot has changed. A few minor changes. Some of the accessories that used to be belt-driven will now all be high voltage, so won't be any belt drive. We commonly will work with New Flyer and get training that helps us with any new technologies that have gone through. We also send some of our staff to the bus builds as inspectors, so they get a little bit of firsthand knowledge as things are getting put together and
that's part of the 60,000 figure as well, then?
I don't believe that's built into that, no. That's just cost of labor.
That's separate. Just to clarify, Phil, this specific training line item is specific to this grant and is a requirement of this grant. It's a workforce development aspect of that federal program. We can always use training, and as Josh mentioned, or you mentioned, we do have new technicians that coming out of the Parkland program, and the hybrid buses are new to them. High voltage is new to them, and so we do training all the time. And this just opens up I don't know what the exact number of hours are, but we get X number of hours of training that we use then that we can put our folks through, and we always want to do training and retraining. So it's great to have, but it's a specific requirement of that grant program.
That makes more sense.
Additional questions?
Question, of course. It's about between the state and the feds, it's 90% government funding, and the rest we're doing 10%. And what fraction of our capital reserve is former government funding. Is the capital reserve all of our own income?
Yeah, that's correct. The latter is correct.
Yeah, okay, good.
No federal or state funding ever goes into our capital reserve. Our capital reserve is generated locally and is used to match federal and state programs, but it's not made up of any federal or state funding.
Additional questions for Ashley or Carl on this item, or Josh? Seeing none, we'll ask for a motion first on the purchase order for 26 buses in the amount of $20,452,172.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to purchase 26 hybrid buses, 40-foot buses. All in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Our second item will be the purchase order for maintenance training in the amount of $60,455. Motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve the purchase order for maintenance training in the amount of $60,455. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. All right. Our next item is a discussion on the Marketplace Mall Agreement.
Hi, everybody. Jay Rank, Operations Director. Go ahead, Tech. Thanks. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit of background on this first. MTD is operated on private property by request, generally, in several instances throughout our history. I can count 9 or 10 instances right now where we operate on private property. A few of the Walmarts, Winfield Village, are a few. In current examples where actually we've been requested for new or additional services at Plastipack and Bland's Farm and Fleet this year, they requested that we divert a route onto their property so that they could get employees there. And yeah, it's viewed as mutually beneficial that we can operate and we can bring people to access their business or residents. So residents, employees, customers, depending on the situation. But usually it's yeah, by request. In the case of Marketplace Mall, the main stop, the average daily boardings is in FY 2019 it was 242. In FY 22 is 171, and I put boardings here, but you could roughly double that for total ridership each day. When somebody gets on the bus. At the yeah, I showed at the main stop, the JCPenney stop, yeah. They're going back home. But do we know? Yeah, if you roughly double that number, it's yeah. It's total ridership, yes, sorry. The red route, 2 red and the 1 yellow serve in the 100 evening and weekend serve. Well, at this point, our research showed that the mall opened in 1975, and I guess I'll get there, and we've been there ever since. So hold on a second, I'll get there. I think it's on the next slide. So a little bit of background then is, MTD staff believe in separation of responsibilities. We provide the public transit service, we provide the buses, we provide the mobility, and then the owner of the property provides the maintenance for the streets, the roads. Similar to the cities provide maintenance for the roads that we drive on, and it's for the public benefit. In that case, so on private property, it would be for the benefit of, their consumers. We have a past precedent of this case as well. In 2017, we left Country Fair. It's a shopping center in West Champaign that we are operating out of for 30, 40 years as well. And there was some maintenance issues that they didn't want to pay for, asked us to pay for. They asked us to pay, I believe, nearly or over $1 million to rebuild all of the roads within their property that we operate on, and we declined and moved our routes out to Round Barn Road. So that's our main transfer point in West Champaign since 2017.
So we made no payment to Fair.
Correct. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, so relevant history in this case. Marketplace opened in 1975, and we've operated out of there since the beginning. I don't recall if it was by request. I can assume so. And it really, I would say that it was successful throughout history. But over the last, 7 or 8 years, I've been in communication with the management at Marketplace to try to address some issues. I've met with them several times, and the concern is generally safety and maintenance. We have had stops on the outer drive historically that there was some concern of safety of passengers being picked up kind of on that outer ring road, which is, kind of by the parking lot. So some concern that passengers were standing in an unsafe position. And then, yeah, the general maintenance of the roads. So to respond, we limited and reduced the number of stops on property at some point in the past. And then more recently, we actually changed the route to reduce the amount of distance driven. So we're no longer operating on the south half of that outer drive, that we're actually, we routed and go out of our way really to stay off of their property, including making the route a little bit less efficient and introducing a new difficult turn from Market View to Market. So we've responded to those requests. But in August of 2022, Marketplace came back and proposed a license fee for us to access their property. I think it was roughly $2,500 a month for us to use their property, and we declined. I believe you guys were all asked about that at that point. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry, here's a few pictures that show us operating at Marketplace throughout time. Based on the vehicles, it looks like it's the 70s and 80s, but we confirmed with the previous managing director that we did in fact start in 1975. Next one, please. Okay, so the current situation is that Marketplace Management again proposed a monthly license fee to offset maintenance and copied the board here a few weeks ago on an email on August 22nd, and also asked for this to be an agenda item for today's board meeting, which it is. So, went dark on me. Okay, so good. The details of the proposal, I've got it also here on my screen as well. Basically, they're offering an initial 5-year term that would go to October 31st, 2028, with a monthly license fee of $1,500. Due at the first of each month. And they stipulate that the existing routes would remain with no additional routes or stops added, and any Additional routes would need written approval directly from the operations manager, general manager of the property. Any rerouting would require approval directly from the operations manager or general manager of the property. And they require that we maintain a certificate of insurance. And they stipulate how we would handle the real-time bus monitors that are hanging, showing the route information if the agreement ends. And it says that we're responsible to remove and restore the site to the original condition, including, terminating the electrical connection and ceiling repairs and repainting. So that's their proposal, and that was sent to you all as well. So I think that's, next slide, I think is the end of this presentation here.
Like we're a customer, right? And we're harming the property.
Yeah, so I guess I would frame it as
almost like vandals.
I guess, sorry, I think I would frame it as, we're mutually beneficial, and I don't think they value what we bring to the property.
What do you think is the number of cars that go there every day? Is it it must dwarf the 250, right? So they see us as a small thing that's causing damage that they can probably tap an income from, or try anyway. And if we withdrew the service, and let's say most of them were employees, marketplace management could care less about whether these people got there by a car, had to get a car, or pool a car and park it in their lot. They would care less about that as an alternative to what we're supplying.
Go ahead, Phil.
This just seems stupid. We're talking about $18,000 a year. The mall is, their tax bill has to be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. I mean, it's a piddly amount of money. They're moving in the right direction, so that's great. We went from $2,200 to $1,500. I think, let's get that number down to zero, and we can talk about maybe throwing them, some free on-bus advertising, and maybe we'll buy some pretzels from Auntie Anne's and we'll call it good. But I mean, this is getting into, I hate to be flippant about $1,500 a month, but for both of the entities involved, this is a ridiculous thing to be wasting our time with.
Yeah, it defies logic. To carry through what we just talked about here, take a look at all the heavy-duty tractor trailers that make deliveries on product to the. Are they dunning them or dinging them? Are they doing anything with delivery trucks from UPS? I mean, how do you arrive at $1,500 based on their total maintenance for the whole lot vis-a-vis the amount of space we drive to get to the bus and out? It just defies logic. It's just an arbitrary number. The only thing I'm concerned about is the PR that would be if we have to make the announcement on the yellow and red lines, which appear to be, to Dick's point, relatively good cost per passenger. It's taking away a regular rider that we just addressed on, why annual passes are down. And I just don't know if a third party can come in and say to them, a Bruce Knight or somebody who is, at a level where they talk about the city in general, this defies logic. I mean, why would you do this when you're taking away transportation for your employees and your customers? Why would you even jeopardize that for low-income people? And besides, It doesn't make sense.
We have had conversations with the city, and I believe that in other meetings with mall management, the city has brought this up and indicated support for us to continue operations on their property, and that it's not reasonable to ask us and us alone to provide maintenance support. The city understands that there is a segregation of responsibilities, and transit does transit, libraries do libraries, park districts do parks, and cities do roads, and private property owners manage their property. And we all do what we are called to do, and we work together, and that's how a community thrives. But when one of those partners says to another partner, we're out, you're responsible now for this thing that I'm responsible for, then community starts breaking down. You very adroitly mentioned public relations, and I don't know what you're going to decide relative to this agreement, but if you choose not to agree to the terms, there's going to be a conversation that happens within the community. This is not a situation that we have advocated for or desired to have. It is a situation that the management of the mall has brought up, and that's I think that's what the community conversation will have to be notified of that.
I guess the thing that most concerns me, and I mentioned this before, is if we pull out, and I personally think we should, rather than pay this money, I'm very concerned about having to be reduced to bus stops just along Neal Street and Market Street. I'm really concerned about the safety of people. I've used this example before. If we have a mother with a toddler in a stroller who gets off the bus on the east side of Market Street, not only does this person have to cross the street when I don't know the speed limit, I don't know whether there are sidewalks there. There are certainly no crossing markings there. Plus, after getting on the west side of Market Street, has to walk a quarter of a mile to get to the entrance of the entrance of the mall. I can't imagine that people would seriously be interested in doing that.
I would like to say, thank you, Margaret. I do want to say, just in fairness, no one from the mall management to date has said, agree to these terms, or you are banned from our property. No one has delivered that message to us or articulated anything even close to that. So I want to be fair. I don't know. Post this discussion and your vote, I don't know what their response will be.
We're not pulling out. If they choose to do something post this meeting, that's them doing it, not us.
That's right, and we don't have an indication of what that action will or will not be after this meeting. So I appreciate your comment, and Brad, you're right, but I just want to clarify that point that no threats or ultimatums have been issued, and as you noted, Brad, we haven't said we're walking from this. We want to provide service to the mall. We think it's a good and valuable service for their tenants, employees, and for their customer base. We want to be there, and so it will be up to them depending on what you decide.
Additional. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Could I ask Jay a question? I looked in the schedules and routes book, but I couldn't ascertain what bus stops do we have on Market Street north of I-74. Do you know offhand? North of I-74? Yeah.
There's one of the Salvation Army.
Yeah, there's a stop that's at Market View going north, and there's a few, one at Salvation Army, maybe one at Wilbur Heights there.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not an ideal location for sure for bus stops. We do serve FedEx, but yeah, we do that off of after we turn onto Mercury.
Could we ask them for a breakdown on how they made this calculation?
I don't think we care. They're just putting a number on this.
Yeah.
Their original number was $2,500, and they decided to lower it $1,000 a month to try to make it more palatable to the board.
In conversations, I believe that they took a percentage of their overall maintenance cost and assigned it. And then to get the original 2,500 and then reduced it after we declined, thinking that maybe that the amount is the issue.
They have precedent with other heavy weight vehicles, with any other delivery trucks or anything, tractor trailers?
Is there precedent for them charging a maintenance fee for any of them? Not that I'm aware of.
Especially the garbage trucks. They're heavier than buses, and they are out there all the time on the back streets picking up the garbage, which are less built for, I imagine. The concrete's thinner back there. I don't know, but.
Al.
One last question.
It's a failing business, marketplace. It's going downhill now. And this is like somebody throwing out a small life vest, hoping we'd bite.
Our attorney's not here, but from a legal standpoint, can they pick and choose the vehicle that they can put a fee on it?
Well, even if our legal counsel was here, I think he would say that he doesn't represent them. He's not the one to answer that question for them. But they own the property; it's their property, and I think that they. I think that they can decide whether or not somebody can enter their property.
Well, it's a PR problem for them at this stage, and
for sure,
we need to make sure that we're on the right side of this from a PR standpoint.
Additional comment, Phil.
All right, so thus far we've been focusing on the financial part of that term sheet. Is there anything on that term sheet that's objectionable to us besides the $1,500 a month?
Well, there are a couple of things that are objectionable, even that aren't financial, but to specifically address your question, this also is not a large amount, but it's problematic that they want us, should they terminate the agreement, then we have to take out the monitor and restore it to its original condition, which I might add was not there was not an agreement in place when we put that, when we installed that 20 years ago. They wanted us to be there to install the real-time information there. That was something that they considered an amenity, and they did not require us to sign anything that said we would restore it to original condition. MTD does not own or have access to ceiling tiles that match their particular ceiling tile, and that might force us into buying a whole box of ceiling tiles to replace the one that the bracket protrudes through. So that's weird, and I don't know why they want to push that requirement. And we can take the equipment out, but surely they have spare ceiling tiles, but they want us to replace the ceiling tile.
Right.
So that's goofy. I will say, and this is something that we probably would have to have a legal look at more fully, or have a conversation with the Federal Transit Administration. They are very restrictive about the number of buses and the stops and the frequency of vehicles entering the property, and they are becoming dangerously close to forcing us to violate federal charter regulations, because if we are not in control of our routes and our schedules, and we have to defer to a third party to determine what we can and cannot do with our routes, that's a charter service, and we are not allowed to provide a charter service per federal law. And so that's a big hang-up right there that has nothing to do with anything financial, but I mean, even if they stripped the financial part out of the agreement and said, you have to sign this, I mean, we would have to do some work with legal on that, but at this point in time, my recommendation would be we can't do that because violating the charter regulation, that endangers all of our federal funding.
Didn't we tell them this in the $2,500 bill request?
Yeah, we had an extensive in-person conversation about that proposal that they gave us for an agreement. We informed them that we had a discussion with each of you in small groups, and you were not interested at the time. That was about a year ago that we did that. And honestly, I think we left that meeting feeling like they understood our perspective, and they ended up coming back and saying, okay, we want to propose an agreement, so we were waiting for that agreement, but they never said anything about the financial side of it at that point in time. And so we thought that it'd be kind of a loose agreement or something that just they wanted in place to say, yes, we are allowed on their property. And so quite frankly, we were surprised when they then came back and said, okay, here's the agreement. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to pay this. And so that wasn't indicated to us prior to this.
Al.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to, again, with get the attorney's advice, not only of their ability to pick and choose, because I think I disagree with your statement that they can restrain our business and our routes. What you said after that convinces me more, that we have a legal basis to say, we are a public entity that provides transportation, and they're restraining us from conducting our business to their location without doing the same to others. And I think we ought to throw right back at them from a legal standpoint that we're not only do we disagree with it, but if you can continue to do that, we're going to sue you.
Well, I don't claim to be an attorney. I am more than happy to have our attorney take a look at that.
Thank you.
I suggest that we need a motion from the chair, but a motion that we say no to this thing.
As soon as we're done with our discussion, we'll do that. Anybody else have anything else you want to talk about on this? I don't hear anybody that's in favor of this. So our motion is going to be whether we're interested in approving the Marketplace Mall agreement. And I'm looking for a motion to approve consideration of this agreement.
So move.
That's not what I'm looking for. I don't want a motion. I want this to die for lack of a motion.
Did I shoot this? Did I speak too soon?
No, I think it's a good idea to get the board on record in public.
I think okay, that's fine. If everybody wants to vote on this, we'll vote on it. So anybody want to second it? Yeah. It's been seconded. It's been moved and seconded to consider the Marketplace Mall agreement. All in favor? Yes, to consider it. Exactly, and you're going to vote against it if you want to reject it. That's your choice. Your choices are to approve the agreement or to reject it. That's what we have in front of us, is to approve the agreement or reject it. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Aye. That motion does not carry. The agreement is rejected. That was our last action item. Al.
I would propose a second motion that we pursue all legal avenues to protect our rights to provide transportation for our customers to and from their location.
I would second that, but I'd like to add on, with Al's permission, that we instruct our attorney to look at, obviously 57 years is a lot more than 20 years of prior use, and we have equipment installed on site. I would say there's some argument that there's an easement of some sort that's been created here, and I'd like him to look at. Al, you approve of that?
I'll accept that. Yeah.
So,
Okay, you've approved his friendly amendment? All right. So we're going to, wait for staff to interject here possibly. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if this is germane to your motion, but just so you know, we will have to get different counsel on this because our corporate counsel's firm also represents Marketplace. A different attorney within the firm represents Marketplace.
come on, a conflict of interest has never stopped Meyer Cable before.
Well, we will probably seek other counsel to avoid even a perception of conflict.
You know what I'm talking about.
But we can do that. That's no problem.
So the motion is to pursue any legal avenues to ensure service to the public through the Marketplace Mall property. Is that?
I'm assuming that we would not do that if Jay's approach. I would assume that Jay will take back the first motion and say, we're rejecting it. Here's our reasoning why. You did a good job the first time. And we would not pursue that until we received something back from them that they would not accept that.
I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time, and that we would do both in parallel, that we would, in particular because we have to seek other counsel out, we would go ahead and begin that process. And I already have someone in mind that I think that we could use, and we can begin that process. It's good to have in our back pocket, and it's maybe handy knowledge for us to have, and we will continue the conversation with the management for Marketplace.
It's a great idea, and I take back what I said, because this could happen again. Again and again
Right.
and again.
Right.
So is there a motion or what?
There is a motion to allow staff to pursue legal methods to ensure service for the public. Is that accurate?
I'd say so moved.
It's been moved, and it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yes, I think Al made the motion, Phil made the second. With the friendly amendment, yes, sorry. All right, that was our last item of business that I'm aware of. So our next meeting will be Wednesday, September 21st, 2023 at 3 o'clock, right here in the Illinois terminal. With that, I'll ask for a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor? We are adjourned.